Hello, and welcome to the Ocean News Podcast, an audio series in which we take a deeper dive into one of the most important stories and the biggest headlines from the Oceanographic newsroom. I'm Rob Hutchins, community editor here at Oceanographic, and in today's episode, well, headlines don't often come much bigger than this one. It's been earmarked as ocean history in the making, the result of more than 20 years of negotiations and the mechanism that could just pave the pathway towards that holy grail of securing the protection of 30% of the global ocean by the year 2030. We are talking, of course, about the full implementation of the High Seas Treaty. It's the moment environmental campaigners and ocean-focused communities across the globe have been waiting for. The High Seas Treaty officially came into force on Saturday, January 17th, marking a monumental milestone for global ocean protection. Following a lengthy 2 decades of negotiations and discussions, the treaty, formerly known as the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, or BBNJ agreement, now establishes the legal framework to protect biodiversity in international waters for the very first time. For those close to the project, this moment has been a long time coming. It was on September the 19th, 2025, that the United Nations finally received that all-important 60th national ratification of the treaty, triggering the process for the agreement to enter into full force. Now, some 120 days on from that September date, and the treaty has become international law, a law that the 81 countries that have now ratified it into their own domestic laws are legally bound to follow. But what does this all mean? Why is the High Seas Treaty regarded as such a critical tool for the protection of the ocean? The high seas, the international waters outside of any one nation's jurisdiction, cover roughly 2/3 of the global ocean. While a patchwork of protections had been in operation at a nation-to-nation level, it is until now that only 1% of these international waters had been offered protection of any real substance. The High Seas Treaty therefore creates, for the very first time, the tools to create marine protected areas on the high seas, while setting the obligations on how ocean resources should be used sustainably. NGOs like Fauna and Flora and Oceana say the treaty could play a crucial role in achieving global biodiversity and climate goals, including the target to protect 30% of the ocean by the year 2030. This, scientists say, is the minimum needed to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, stabilize the climate, and safeguard food security for billions of people around the world. When framed like this, the High Seas Treaty emerges as a rather critical tool to achieving a positive and prosperous future for both people and the planet. But while the adoption of the High Seas Treaty is a major milestone for ocean protection, it is only the first step on a long pathway towards the full protection of a vulnerable ecosystem under increasing fire from a multitude of threats. So, what are the next steps towards safeguarding such a critical ecosystem and environment? Scientists have cautioned that the hard work really does start now. Callum Roberts, Professor of Marine Conservation in the Centre for Ecology and Conservation at the University of Exeter, has warned that protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030 will only succeed if that protection is real, enforced, and politically robust. The failure of many marine protected areas to date, he argues, has been found in the desire to secure environmental wins without confronting the difficult trade-offs.
I think until now, we've been living in a kind of world where we want the best of all worlds with very little effort. And marine protected areas that have been created to date have largely not been sufficiently protected. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is it's expensive to provide high levels of protection, good monitoring, surveillance, and enforcement for a protected area. But the second one is that politicians have been reluctant to create protected areas that are sufficiently protected to make a difference to wildlife in the water. We've got to realize that there's no free lunch when it comes to protected areas. You can't just magic up a response by nature just because you draw a line on a map. It's got to be something that animals will feel in the water. The High Seas Treaty is absolutely essential to the world achieving 30 by 30 in the ocean. We won't be able to protect 30% of the ocean without the high seas. And that's, because the high seas occupies 61% of the area of the ocean and 75% of its volume. So international waters are woefully underprotected right now, and there's an urgent need to change that.
Amid celebrations around the world over the adoption of the High Seas Treaty, the UK's own government has come under fire for dragging its heels in ratifying the treaty into its own law. Despite issuing a promise this past summer to ratify the treaty and enhance its protection of the high seas, the UK's Labour government continues to delay the process. Environmental campaigners have warned that it now runs the very real risk of being sidelined from the next phase of international ocean protection. More than 80 nations have now ratified the treaty, including China, France, Japan, Spain, and Mexico. Campaigners argue that with each passing day it fails to ratify the treaty into domestic law, the UK's opportunity to take a bold leadership role on ocean protection diminishes. Among the concerns is that the UK could find itself locked out of an Ocean Conference of the Parties, which has been slated to take place as early as this August. If you would like to learn more about this story or other stories related to the UN's High Seas Treaty, head to the Oceanographic Newsroom. This has been the Ocean News Podcast. I've been Rob Hutchins. Thank you for listening.